The following is a presentation of 13ABC Action News. Now, your table is ready. Join 13ABC's Jeff Smith with the decision makers of Northwest Ohio and Southeast Michigan. This is the Roundtable.
We got a lot to cover in the next half hour. We so appreciate you spending part of your Sunday here with us on the Roundtable program. Want to introduce to you my first guest this afternoon. He is General Manager of TARTA here in Northwest Ohio, Toledo Area Regional Transit Authority. Jim Gee, thank you so much for taking some time. We discussed before we came on here. You've been to some of our other community affairs programs. First initial sitting at the Roundtable. Glad to have you.
Thank you and good morning.
And in our second segment, we're going to talk a little bit to some folks out of Perrysburg and one of the efforts they have coming up next month to recoup some of the monies lost. And we'll get into that story in just a moment. But first, back to Jim and where TARTA sits right now. Jim, over the last couple of years, we have covered kind of the stalemate that exists with some of the participating communities around Northwest Ohio, namely Perrysburg, Sylvania Township. Sylvania Township looking to put on its ballot in November an opting out clause for the citizens to decide on. Perrysburg has already said we're opting out. Both of those communities right now do not have working scenarios for what's next. What is our next mode of transportation? However, by and large, getting 2 of 10 communities that are within this lot, that's a tough pill to swallow, right?
It is a tough pill to swallow. It is not so bad for TARTA because TARTA itself is scalable. I mean, TARTA will shrink. We will, shrink in the number of vehicles, shrink in the number of drivers. But for those member communities that remain in TARTA, we will be there. Mm-hmm. What happens, though, is the impact on our passengers.
How so?
They rely on TARTA transportation to get from A to B. And a lot of times, their job, their destination is in those suburban areas that are opting out of the transit authority.
I think you did an article with the Truth, Sojourner Truth here a couple of months ago, and one of the things you pointed out, areas like Perrysburg, you were trying to bring up the point, some of those employees that are at the Hilton Garden Inn down there relied on your service to get out there. Are you hearing what they're doing now?
Well, right now,
or what their plans are for the future?
What we're hearing now is they don't have an option. Mm-hmm. And it's scary. The owner of the Hilton Garden Inn said that 30% of his employees use public transit to get to work. They live in Toledo, they work in Perrysburg, and by having Perrysburg get out of the transit authority, they may lose their job. If you think of our demographics here in Northwest Ohio, a lot of the job growth is in suburban areas. It's along the suburban fringe. But the labor force, especially the labor force who are looking for that first job or perhaps trying to save money, is still within the city of Toledo. And that disconnect really makes it an issue for folks to get to work and help our region become successful.
As you look at these communities and the decisions, are you worried? Rossford was talked about at one point. Are you worried there are going to be more that are going to fall?
I hope not.
What is the vibe you're getting?
I hope not. Some of the communities are watching Perrysburg to see what the impact is. But I think there's also a vibe, so to speak, of the need to help the greater region. Folks understand that having access to jobs is important. Having transportation for senior citizens and for the disabled is important for the quality of life in our region.
Was this just inevitable that given the economic picture around and the businesses closing and the job forecast being what it is, that public transportation was not going to be needed as much?
Well,
but you debate that. You say ridership, you've seen it increase.
Yeah, there certainly is an anti-tax climate. There's certainly a burden on property taxes. At TARTA, we have not raised our property tax millage since 1987, but there are a lot of property taxes out there.
Still a 3/4?
Still at 2.5 mils.
2.5 mils.
We're unique in that we're one of the few services that individual communities can opt out of. We're also unique in that we have the potential of a sales tax if the remaining member communities would agree to put it on the ballot. And eliminate the property tax. So that anti-tax sentiment is an issue, but it also is counter to the second half of your question. Our ridership is up. Our adult ridership is up 13%. Our caller ride in suburban areas is up. Our TARPS ridership for the disabled is up 20% and has been up 100% over the last 3 years. Usage is up on TARTA and demand is up on TARTA because folks are living longer, they are working later in life, they are looking to save money and looking for public transit as a way to do that.
And obviously, you know, you've heard the comments that have come from some of the administrators around the area, and I wanted to share one with folks when Mayor Nelson Evans out of Perrysburg was asked a question regarding this exit from TARTA and that usage. He said this, and I share with you now. He said, "From what people are telling me, they're tired of seeing these empty buses driving around town with nobody in them. As demographics have changed over the years, people here in Perrysburg just don't use it as much." That's contrary to what you're saying, but is it just Perrysburg was seeing this? I mean, are other areas seeing something different?
Well, in suburban areas, on a traditional fixed route, it's typically the end of the route. You know, very similar to a subway line in New York City, where at the suburban end, the subway train is empty, but when you get to Manhattan, it's full. We're the same way. Where on the suburban end of the route, folks have already been off the bus, and that's the way it works. And then on the way back into town, they board the bus, and by the time it reaches Toledo, it is full. You know, certainly in Perrysburg, with our caller ride services, our TARP services, and even our fixed route services, which takes folks back and forth to work, have seen ridership increases.
We talked a little bit before we started today about public transportation in itself, and we've heard the words intermodal used so much in the last couple of years and how essential transportation is to this market, to this region. Yet we see kind of this negative stain on TARTA. We saw the Blade article a couple of, within the last week and a half or so, talking about Toledo Express Airport and how ridership is down there. You're part of the industry. I mean, what is your take on where we stand right now as far as a region, as far as usage is concerned, and how it needs to be improved? The one thing they brought up, and I talked to you about this before we came out here today, the one thing they brought up in the Blade article was they compared it to Akron and the usage of the airport there and how it is really being pushed across to people as a business. TARTA has been advertised, marketed as a business in the past. People have seen the ads. People saw the gas guzzler ads. I mean, what is the solution?
Well, part of the solution is marketing. Part of the solution also is making TARTA more accessible to passengers. We've done that with
not enough stops, you're saying?
Well, partially with the nature of the service, such as caller ride in suburban areas, but partially also in making it more attractive to customers through technology. We're in the process now of implementing a program where you can walk out to a bus stop, text TARTA, and it will text back when your bus will be there. You can get on the internet and see exactly where your bus is before walking out to the bus stop.
So there's not as much unknown anymore standing at that bus stop.
And if you take the unknown away from passengers and potential passengers, you'll build ridership.
Yeah. As you move forward and looking at the financial status of TARTA, there's been talk in the past about how TARTA gets too much money, TARTA doesn't watch its books, TARTA does this, TARTA does that. You say you guys are on firm ground right now as far as the finances are concerned.
We are. Again, we have not raised our property tax millage since 1987. We have tightened our belt. We have purchased more smaller vehicles. We have looked at innovative things such as biodiesel and hydrogen biodiesel in order to save money. And we are creative and innovative all the time in how we provide our service.
You guys got a federal grant last year to implement new buses into the fleet?
Yes.
And those have already started being kind of moved into the territory?
We had 37 TARPS vehicles and 5 caller ride vehicles already placed in service as a result of that grant. Those 37 TARPS vehicles have really helped us accommodate the growth of the program.
And as far as the buses, those are slowly being, the older buses are being taken out, the newer buses are being put in. Is that making a dent as far as fuel costs and transportation expenses, service for that matter?
It helps us with quality of service, and it certainly helps us with the maintenance budget. By the time we retire a full-size bus, it will be 15, 16 years old, have somewhere in the neighborhood of 600,000 to 700,000 miles. and frankly, they're pretty tired. And by being able to put a new bus in there, that does save us on maintenance costs.
When we look at levies and that sort of thing, when is the next one possibly for taxpayers?
2017.
Okay, so not for a few more years yet, 5 more years. And as we move forward, you said we need to treat this as a business, we need to market it as a business. Are you unhappy with the business people in Toledo not using it as much?
No, I mean, we've seen usage increase, and our role is, frankly, to make sure that folks are able to get from A to B in a cost-efficient and safe and reliable manner. You know, people that use public transit do so for a number of reasons, one of which is to save money. Nationally, the stat is the average transit customer saves $9,600 a year by using transit instead of driving. That person in Toledo who takes the bus instead of using the car saves money, and what do they do with that money? They spend it in the local economy. They have more money to spend at the store, more money to spend for services such as doctor and medical appointments and so on.
Jim, how do people go about finding out? You talked about the notification that the bus is on its way. How do they find that out?
We have a website, www.tarta.com. There is a page on that website that specifically talks about what TARTA is looking at in the future in terms of changes to make the service better.
All right, so go check that out. Jim Gee, thank you so much for taking some time sitting at the Roundtable with us.
Thank you.
We'll see you next time, and stay right there. We'll wrap things up with our second segment here on the Roundtable right after this.